Hi everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Hope from Home, the show where we bring you conversations of hope from our home to yours. Today, Neil McCarthy of the Archdiocese of Toronto tells Noel Local what the reopening of churches may look like when that happens. Jermaine speaks with Justin Farr, an African-American seminarian for the Diocese of Nashville, Tennessee, and Luisa Florentine learns how a doctor in the Philippines is helping children cope with stress. It's not surprising, but you probably won't expect what it is. And of course, they'll all tell us where they're finding hope from our home to yours.
Hello, Neil McCarthy. Thanks for joining us for this episode of Hope from Home.
Great to be with you.
Great. Listen, as the Director of Communications for the Archdiocese of Toronto, I'm hoping that you can perhaps spread some light on the question that everyone is thinking about at this point, and that is, in particular, what would physical distancing policies look like in the churches once they're open again?
Well, sure. I mean, obviously, we'd like to get back as soon as possible. That's what we all want to be able to do. So we're waiting for that date and preparing accordingly. And yes, when people come back to church, there's definitely going to be physical distancing required. So essentially staying 2 meters from everyone, except for your own family members as you enter the church and you're part of the church celebrations. And so we'll have some spaces marked out, obviously, with the pews separated. It may be between rows, every other row or every other row, depending on the requirements that we land on. And also being able to sit with your own family, but then being distanced from your neighbors, that kind of thing. Lining up for communion, there's going to be physical distancing around that. And then when we're entering and departing the church as well, we have to be mindful of the fact that while we're accustomed to wanting to socialize and gather in the foyer or outside, we're not going to be able to do that for the time being.
Okay. Is there any ideas at this point, any dates maybe being tossed around as to when that might happen?
Yeah, the magic answer that everyone's looking for is the date. And I wish I could say, here is the date. So much of it is reliant on the medical authorities that we're taking advice from. Unfortunately, in the province of Ontario, we're seeing that the numbers are still quite high, and the chief medical officer wants to get below a certain number before they start loosening those restrictions. But what we are trying to do is prepare for the fact that when we do get the green light, we'll be ready to go. We can anticipate it will likely be a phased approach. So we're not going to be able to start with, full capacity of our churches as we had been accustomed to before the pandemic time. But we'll likely experience a time where it's gradually phased in. So that may start with churches being open for private prayer or just daily mass, and then eventually moving to a point where we can offer weekend masses. And we're seeing that in other jurisdictions that have already opened up, same sort of approach.
A question there is, do you think that it be possible, or there's a possibility of more masses happening? Because if there will be restricting the amount of people going into the church, that means not a lot of people will be able to get in. Will there be more masses planned rather than the usual 3 or 4 on a Sunday morning, maybe throughout the afternoon?
That's something definitely that parish by parish communities are looking at, depending on how large their congregations are. The other thing is, how comfortable are people going to be coming back right away? In other jurisdictions, some of the dioceses have seen the numbers being quite small. Others, it's been larger. So we're trying to kind of deal with both possibilities as well. And it's going to be a new experience for everyone. So whether we, have to have more masses, the other thing that we have to really consider is the amount of cleaning that needs to be done. So we're going to have to be cleaning surfaces probably between every mass. Lots of volunteers. We're going to have cleaning ministries like we've never had before. So there's going to be the time that's required to get people in safely, get people out safely, to clean the church, and then start the next mass. So all that's being taken into account as we prepare our plans for reopening.
Are there any public safety metrics that need to be hit before the Cardinal decides to, open up the doors again?
Well, obviously, we're taking our cues from the chief medical health officers. So there's provincial medical officer, and there's also a municipal medical health officers too. And so they're the ones that are really driving, the size of the gatherings we can have, when it's safe to do so. We're also meeting with provincial officials to make sure that kind of our protocols are the best practices in terms of what we need to do to foster a safe environment. So those are the kind of things we're looking at. So it's not as easy as, just saying the cardinal, obviously saying, okay, we want to open the church. He would love to open the churches yesterday. But obviously we want to do it when it's safe and prudent to be able to do that. And we want to make sure that we have the health of our, faithful as our number one priority. And we've seen, unfortunately, in some parts of the world where gatherings of faith communities have been the sources of outbreak of the pandemic and further infection. And we don't want to do that where we have a second wave and go back 3 steps when we try to move forward. So that's part of the challenge as well, striking that balance and getting our churches open as soon as it's safe to do so.
So Neil, being the director of communications for the Archdiocese, you must come across some incredible stories of hope and faith. Is there any in particular that you can share with us today?
It's unfortunate. Obviously, no one wants to have the churches closed, but because of that reality, we've seen some amazing things that people have done in the community to reach out to those who are isolated. We have a parish out in the West End of Toronto that's reached out by telephone to more than 2,000 families, and just making that personal contact with them has been so important. I also think of places like the Good Shepherd Refuge where they're still serving hundreds of meals a day. They can't do it with a hot meal, but volunteers are going down and bringing bag lunches, hundreds of bag lunches every day to ensure that the homeless are still fed. And then we have stories of people priests who are visiting sick, individuals who are in long-term care facilities, may not be able to go into the facility, but are saying prayers through the window or saying the rosary over the phone. And so they're really inspiring. And through this challenging time that we're seeing, we're also seeing the best of people coming forward and reaching out to care and love and serve, just following the example of Jesus. So it really is beautiful in many ways.
Yeah, that's incredible. Listen, we're running out of time, but I do want to ask you one last question. What gives you hope personally during these times, Neil?
Well, I mean, as I said, it's faith in action. When we're asked to leave church every week, the idea is go and serve. And how can you announce the gospel? And how do we live that in tangible ways? And, I'm fortunate in my role that I get to see and hear about that. Try to do that in my own family, in my own community, to try to think of how we can reach people who may be alone or isolated during these difficult days. So that would be a challenge that I would say for all of us to consider as we work and pray to get towards a time where we can gather again. How can we reach those who are isolated or marginalized?
Yeah. Neil, as always, it's a pleasure talking to you.
Hey, great to be with you.
Hi there, Justin. Welcome to Hope from Home.
Hey, it's good to be here. Thank you very much. How you doing, Jermaine?
Absolutely fantastic. Really appreciate your time and your energy and just being here and being present for our discussion. So I'll just dive right in. So I know that you've just finished your second year seminary. What initially drew you to Catholicism, and then what eventually drew you to your current vocation of seeking out the priesthood?
Yeah, like, the good thing about being in seminary is that like you often have a lot of time to kind of tell and retell your vocation story and also how you became Catholic if you're a convert. So I always kind of boil it down to initially early on there were 3 things, and then a 4th one kind of solidified after I'd been Catholic for a little bit. One thing that drew me early on back in high school was the beauty of Catholic worship and ritual, because I grew up in a Baptist background, and then for a long time we didn't go to church. So when I encountered the beauty of Catholic ritual, I wanted to worship God that way. And so that drew me in to learn more about the Catholic faith. And then the second thing is that, again, the church is over 2,000 years old. So coming from a Protestant background, there's a large number of churches that only began their history, again, after 1517. And so, but I knew Christianity was 2,000 years old. And so because I'm a history major back in college, and I love history, I asked the question, what's the oldest church? I mean, this church that goes all the way back to the beginnings of Christianity. And so when I learned that the Catholic Church is one of those churches that calls itself an apostolic church, and it means it goes back to the apostles again, and it has this rich 2,000 year history, that provoked me to dive even more deeper. And then this third point for this early period is the theological and moral teaching integrity of the church. So what I saw in Protestantism, especially mainline Protestantism, was that a lot of churches compromise on their theological and moral teachings. And of course, you can't teach one thing and then 100 years later start teaching another thing. It's like you got to have some type of integrity in regards to your teaching. Otherwise, why would anybody believe what's coming out of the pulpit or anything? And so, and then lastly, again, that was all before I became Catholic. This is around 2011. And then I became officially Catholic in 2013. After that point, I really started thinking about, okay, I was looking at Eastern Orthodoxy early on, but I never really investigated it early. But later I started to, and I asked the question, if the Catholic Church and the Eastern Orthodox churches make similar claims in regards to being the one holy Catholic and Apostolic Church, which one of these churches is correct? And same thing with the Oriental Orthodox. And I began to settle down like on the Matthew 16:18, in which Jesus says to Peter, he renames Simon to Peter and says, "You are a rock, and upon this rock I shall build my church." And ultimately, the Catholic interpretation of that passage and the authority and the weight that Catholics put on that teaching was ultimately more persuasive to me than any other view on that topic. And so ultimately, again, those three things early on, and then a fourth solidified my Catholicity.
That's really interesting to hear of your journey, and it definitely resonates with me, because I also am newer to the Catholic faith, coming from a Protestant branch of it, and even before that, much like yourself, not attending for a little bit of time. So it's interesting that, and something that for myself, being a newer Catholic, that I'm starting to come across is some of more of that Black influence within the Catholic Church. And in reading some of your writings, I saw that you had touched on and talked about Father Tolton, which is very new to me. I didn't realize the depth of our influence. For those who aren't aware of Father Tolton, can you speak to his importance to you personally and spiritually, and what do you think we can all learn from his life?
Yeah, I think just kind of give a brief recap of who Father Tolton is. Again, his full name is Father Augustus Tolton, and he's currently a venerable, and along the lines of like the canonization process. He was just declared venerable last year by Pope Francis and stuff, and so his canonization cause is still ongoing. So definitely ask for his intercession so we can get some miracles going and get him up to sainthood. But again, just briefly again, Father Tolton is the first recognized African-American Catholic priest in United States history. And like, again, he's one of my personal patrons, and I pray to him every day, and I try to maintain and grow my spirituality in regards to him. And then lastly, again, he's a saint. He's like what I refer to as a saint from home. Like he lives with me because he lives in my community. He's a home saint to me, and so he looks like me. Like we got the same background, and so there's a lot to relate. There, a lot to look up to, and a lot to emulate myself around. And it's somebody that I can make a personal connection to, especially while I'm in this pathway to the priesthood.
That's amazing, and there's something to be said about seeing someone who looks like you, who has been a trailblazer, and being able to follow in that wake and to be able to continue to do that good work. So that's amazing that you have been able to, you found someone that you can anchor yourself in as you proceed forward in your journey through seminary.
Yes.
With this times that we're living in, we're seeing a lot and experiencing a lot. What is your hope for people as we work our way through these times of COVID-19 and just going forward?
Yeah, I guess like there's at least one thing I can say, and I think only one. I can't give an answer for every single hope. I can at least give one thing to kind of chew on, and that's that we know that there is a future. We know that we're going to come out of this. And the church is going to come out of this. And the way we know that is by looking at people like me, looking at seminarians, looking at right now, we're right in the middle of ordination season. And many priests are being ordained, many deacons are being ordained, and many seminarians are receiving ministries. And so we're seeing the very same future God has planned out for us, the very same future that we know the church is going to have right before our very eyes. So when we go to ordination and we see a priest, we know that regardless of what coronavirus has to say, God has the last say. God is not through with us yet. And God is not through with his church yet. And so that church is going to live on because we still have priests being ordained. We still have deacons being ordained. We still have men going into the seminary right after a big crisis in the summer of shame in 2018. And it's like I went to seminary in that, like, after that summer. And so again, we got 120 guys at St. Mondrad in my seminary. And so again, that's the hope I want to give, is that we there's still a future. God is not done with us yet and stuff. And so there's still work to do, and the work is not going to end until Christ comes back, until men stop being ordained for the priesthood. Again, God is not through with us yet.
Yeah, that's a beautiful sentiment. You're right. As time goes ahead, as long as we have the priests, the lay people, and everybody else, you put it best. The church will continue.
Yeah.
Justin, I really appreciate your time today. Good luck and God bless as you go forward through your rest of your journey to being ordained, and look forward to keeping in touch and seeing as you go along.
Thank you very much. I look forward to keeping in touch with you on Twitter and anywhere else you can get in contact with me.
Awesome. Take care.
Hi, Dr. Faith. Thank you so much for being here. You're all the way halfway around the world in Manila, Philippines.
Yes.
Thank you. So as a pediatrician there, you actually kind of thought outside the box and decided to bring your services to your patients in their homes. So could you talk a little bit about what a typical day might be like for you?
Well, these are unusual times. That's why I had to be creative with the way I offer healthcare to my patients, and most especially catching up on immunizations for a lot of the kids in my clinic. They've been delayed for 1 to 2 months. So prior to the visit, I decided to engage with the family more through a virtual consult. And that's where I do anticipatory screening and guidance and address all the health issues and questions that the mom may have for a child. This lessens the contact time during the vaccination visit. So after which, I proceed to their homes, and I bring with me my personal protective equipment, luggage where I put my tools for the visit, my cooler where I put my vaccines, and I'm good to go. So I just tell my patients to prepare an open space for us for the safety of both parties, and there we conduct the vaccine visit.
Yeah, that's wonderful. Wonderful that you have kind of this system going on and are well equipped for the day. So what kind of reactions have you been getting from your patients since you've offered this service?
They're mostly relieved. I tried to open one clinic day once. Nobody wanted to go. They were all anxious to go out, to step out of their home. So I completely understand, since I'm also a mother, and I understand the anxiety of bringing their children outside. Yeah. So decided that instead of the entire family going out, it would have to be me seeking them out, going to their homes and going out of my comfort zone.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for doing that. I think it makes a difference to have doctors like yourself who really go above and beyond to continue to care for their patients, even amidst a pandemic like this. And you're in Manila, and so there's bigger population there. So understandably, people are more anxious to, avoid contact as much as possible. So it's great that you have this to offer them. So maybe we could move back to your home life a bit, because apart from being a pediatrician, you are also the CEO and co-founder of Manila Wooden Toys, which is founded on open-ended play. So how have you been kind of keeping your kids creatively and cognitively enriched during this time?
Well, I've always been an advocate of play, and I believe in its profound experience, the profound experience that the child experiences. It is both learning and therapeutic for them. That's why when the lockdown happened, I've anticipated some stressors that the children might experience, and they may not be able to express this stress verbally. So what I did was I just let them play, and knowing that we had some trips canceled, they were looking forward to their summer vacation, and things suddenly changed. They were suddenly with me 24/7 with their parents. They couldn't go out. They locked the common areas here in the condominium. They couldn't run around or visit their relatives. So I saw them play and realized that, wow, they had more control over their environment through open-ended play. Like the couch became their airplane, and they went to several countries. They went on an adventure. They even put on their travel clothes. They brought their luggages. And what I simply did was offer open-ended materials in their environment, including, of course, the Manila Wooden Toys products that we've been offering for families. Over that, we had Lego, we had blocks, we had make-believe toys, we had dinosaurs. All those things were made available in their environment, and it has, I believe, helped them cope with the stress of the pandemic.
Yeah, that's amazing. I think we could learn a lot from kids and their imagination during this time, because as adults, I think we have a tendency to maybe jump from one problem to the next, and meanwhile kids just want to play, wherever they are. And play and creativity, I think, does not discriminate on age. I think even as as we grow older, I think we are still allowed to do that. And more than anything now, I think that will help us as we move forward. You actually have one of the Manila Wooden Toys that you guys create there, right? That's the Rainbow Arc?
Fine. Yes, the Rainbow Arc. This one I made available locally, since it was very expensive to have the European kind shipped to the Philippines. So I believed so much in the skills of and the craftsmanship of our Filipino workers here, and they can deliver the same quality. And actually, before the ECQ, we've been developing more toys with other Filipino designers, original designs, but the quarantine happened, the lockdown happened, and we had plans for Manila Wooden Toys that we had to forgo for the meantime.
You have faith as part of your name, which I think is so beautiful. So what do you think this season has taught you about your faith?
Oh, well, when the lockdown happened, we all realized that the world fell silent, right? And we were all stunned. We were stripped of the regular life as we knew it. And in the process, I realized the things that were really essential in life. So we may have a different set of challenges. The struggles may have changed. But for me, the course really hasn't changed. No? The goal is still the same. It's still, as a Christian, to reach heaven and to sanctify ourselves in our lives, our ordinary lives. The thing is, I am still a mother, even during the lockdown. I'm still a doctor. I'm still a wife. And these are the things that I sanctify and offer to God to fulfill God's will. And this has been the source of my strength, the source of my serenity all throughout this pandemic. There may be challenges, there may be anxiety, there may be suffering all around. I may be pulling my hair out, thinking of activities for my children, seeing the defects of myself and the household members that I continue to live with 24/7. But still, the struggle is there, and the goal is still the same, and it's to reach heaven.
Amen. Amen. That's beautiful. I love what you said there. I'm still a doctor. I'm still a mom. And the goal is still the same. That's so beautiful. A beautiful reminder to all of us right now that no matter the circumstance, we should always continue our pursuit for holiness and keep, answering God's call to be with Him, no matter where we are or what we're doing. So thank you so much, Dr. Faith, for your time, and I wish you all the best.
Thank you, Louisa.
And that's all for today. I think we're all ready for churches to be opened, but I understand how it has to be different depending on the medical authorities where everyone is located. Let's pray that it happens soon and that we're able to do so in a way that is safe for everyone. Also, wasn't it good to hear from Justin Farr and learn about his vocation story and about Father Tolton? Did you know about him? And what did you think about the work of Dr. Faith in the Philippines? It's so true that play and make-believe can help children cope with stress. Do you have any children? How are you helping them cope during the current situation? Share your comments with us by following Salt and Light Media on all of our social media platforms and commenting with the hashtag #HopeFromHome. If you missed any part of the episode and you'd like to watch it again, you can always visit our website, saltandlighttv.org/hopefromhome. We hope that these stories inspire you to stay positive and remind you that we're all still connected through hope.